Hey guys, for writing today, we are going to be rereading Source 3. I'm saying rereading because we did read this in class before school was over, which feels like a million years ago. Um, but we are going to reread today. Our purpose for reading is just to understand the text, and tomorrow we will be rereading with the purpose of gathering information so that we can contribute to our writing process. So if you remember anything about Source 3 was about the Quartering Act. And several of you have actually said you pulled out your Frayer model, which was the vocabulary word organizer that we used on this. So that's awesome. If you have it, you can pull it out because you do have a page on quartering. Just to go over quartering again, that doesn't necessarily mean to like throw quarters at someone. um, and it also doesn't mean court like court of law. What it means is providing living spaces for military members. So when they started trying to pass this quartering act, the original expectation was that soldiers would be put in homes with the colonists. And you might remember this conversation that we had. We talked a lot about if you were told all of a sudden that these military members were going to be needing a space in your home. And we talked about, like what room would they likely be put in? And a lot of you said probably yours. So think about those colonists. A lot of kiddos were kicked out of their bedrooms to provide room for soldiers. Now, some colonies fought back on this and instead were some laws were passed that the soldiers didn't stay in the homes with the colonists, but they stayed in like empty houses or barns. But then the colonists were still paying to provide heat via firewood and furniture like bedding and food for these soldiers. So while they didn't have to stay in their homes in some of the colonies, they still were paying for the living situations for these soldiers. So let's read Source 3 so that we can make sure we fully understand it because, again, this is from first person. So this was written in like the 1760s. This was actually one of the first acts put in place. This happened before the Boston Tea Party and all of that as well. So here we go. I have mentioned that the contest between Britain and America is likely to get worse. Now, when we see that word contest, they're not talking about like a milk chugging contest or who can run the fastest kind of contest. They're more talking about a conflict because Britain, which is England, and America were in this conflict. Old world versus new world. The colonists started to feel like they were their own people. They had actually just been kind of a little bit involved in the French and Indian War, which took place in what is now the United States. So they were united as a people. Um, and they started to feel like they were a little bit different from England. So, they started raising some conflicts. Okay, in the same meeting about the Stamp Act, which you're going to learn about in the video in social studies today, in the meeting about the Stamp Act, an act was passed to provide the quartering of soldiers in America. When the bill was first brought in, it contained a clause empowering the officers to quarter their soldiers in private houses. So I'm going to stop there, and that's what I talked about with the original law had a clause, and we talked about clauses in grammar. This is like an idea. It had an idea that officers would basically just find homes for their soldiers, and that could be homes that colonists already lived in, private homes. This we were very against, and it got taken out. So in this particular colony, which I'm unsure which colony this was written from, they were able to fight this law and they got that part taken out. However, here we go. The bill passed, however, with the clause that empty houses, barns should be used for them, and that the respective cities where they were should pay the expense and furnish firewood, bedding, drink, and some other articles to soldiers for free. So that would essentially mean, like, let's put this in present day. If soldiers were then coming to Mount Vernon to live, any soldiers that found an empty barn or an empty house to live in Mount Vernon, we would have to pay for their bedding, their food, their drink, their clothes, and their firewood. So as a community, we would be providing those things for the soldiers. Continuing on, there is no way for any city to do this but by the British making a law to raise the money. Taxes. Pennsylvania Assembly has made such a law. So the Pennsylvania Colony group of leaders, they called themselves the Assembly. Um, those group of leaders had made the law, so they were providing bedding and food and all that for their soldiers. The New York Assembly has refused to do it. So New York said, absolutely not. And our last sentence here, and now all the talk here is to send a military force to convince them. England was not happy that New York said no, and so England is planning now to send a military force because when you say no to something, but then a group of people show up with weapons, you're more inclined to agree. So they don't have the means to fight back right now, so they, you know, are more they're more likely to agree to this law if there is military force involved. So that's kind of just a snapshot of the Quartering Act. In social studies today, you're going to watch a video that also goes over the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act, which were two other laws that required taxation on the colonists. If you have questions, visit office hours as always, and have a great day, guys.